Hello, my name's Mark Addison. I'm a member of Christ Central Church, and this morning I'm going to be talking on Mark 11, chapters 12 to 19, and I'm going to be using the Living Translation version of this. And there's effectively two passages that I'm going to be talking about today. The next morning, as they were leaving Bethany, Jesus was hungry. He noticed a fig tree full of leaf a little way off. So he went over to see if he could find any figs, but there were only leaves because it was too early in the season for fruit. When Jesus said to the tree, "May no one ever eat your fruit again," and the disciples heard him saying it. When they arrived back in Jerusalem, Jesus entered the temple and began to drive out the people buying and selling animals for sacrifices. He knocked over the tables of the money changers and the chairs of those selling doves. And he stopped everyone from using the temple as a marketplace. He said to them, "The scripture declares, 'My temple will be called a house of prayer for all nations,' but you have turned it into a den of thieves." When the leading priests and teachers of religious law heard what Jesus had done, they began planning how to kill him, but they were afraid of him because the people were so amazed at his teaching. That evening, Jesus and his disciples left the city. It's all very, very curious. So, first reading, the notion of Jesus cursing a fig tree for having no figs because it's too early in the season seems a little perverse. However, it should be noted fig trees produce first fruit and leaves afterwards. So it naturally followed that Jesus would suppose that as it had leaves, it would have fruit. When Jesus approached the tree, it was time for the first fruit of the figs, even though it had not yet time for the main harvest. The tree was cursed for its pretense of leaves, not for its lack of fruit. Like the Jews, who had the outward form but no fruit. In this picture, Jesus warned of God's displeasure when we have the appearance of fruit, but not the fruit itself. God isn't pleased when his people are all leaves and no godly fruit. So that's a quite interesting situation that I've had no notion of, that I do some reading to get to that understanding. And probably anybody that's a fruit grower might actually be able to add any more information on that. So next, Jesus saw the abomination and abuse which was happening in the temple, a holy place which should be a place of prayer and worship. Now, dove sellers were selling doves that were usually sacrificed by the poor and women who could not afford grander sacrifices. And money changers existed in the temple to convert the many currencies in use into currency that was accepted for paying the temple taxes. So Jesus put an embargo on people carrying any merchandise through the temple, a sanction which would have disrupted all commerce. This was being conducted in the outer courts of the temple, the only area where the Gentiles could pray and worship. Therefore, this place of prayer had been made into a marketplace, and a dishonest one at that. I'll remind you what he said. He said, the scripture declares, "My temple will be called a house of prayer for all nations," so the Gentiles as well, "but you have turned it into a den of thieves." So the temple area was filled with profiteers who worked in cooperation with the priests, and they robbed the pilgrims by forcing them to purchase approved sacrificial animals and currencies at inflated prices. The money exchanges made the exchanges into temple money at outrageous rates. I was quite pleased to actually be covering these two passages together, as there is in a sense, a relationship between the fig not bearing fruit, which Jesus yearned to satisfy his physical hunger, and the conduct and encounter in the temple not bearing spiritual fruit, which focused on the Father, i.e. the temple should be truly a house of prayer for all the people and for all of us. So that's pretty much what I've got to say on that. But maybe we could consider areas in our lives where we are being fruitful and where we aren't being fruitful, and the fact that God is really seeing what we're actually producing and not what we have the outward appearance of producing.